Are we going? I'm assuming this is being videoed. Let me know when we get going. This all feels very different. It feels like summer and we're in the wrong room. Yeah.
We all graduated a month ago.
Yeah. It's like you forgot to pass in your last paper and you have to come back and do it. This is why Representative Cody sort of never did interim study. So let this be a lesson to all of us for any committee work in the future. Are we live? We are set. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Barbara Griffin. We are starting late. This is the House Election Law Committee. It is June 16th. We are addressing interim study bills. And before we begin with this state business, I'm going to ask that everybody join me in a pledge of allegiance here today. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can you give me the substitute, please? All right, thank you, everybody. As I said, this has been noticed as a work study on the bills that we voted interim study. We're going to discuss all of them. Then we're going to take a short break, and then we'll come back and take a vote on all of them. The attendance today, we are fortunate to have some substitutes here today, and I just want to acknowledge them. Representative Dawn Johnson is here. Representative Maureen Mooney has agreed to come back to our committee again. I take that as a good sign. Representative Schultz is here. Good morning. And also Representative Nutting Wong is here. Thank you. So thank you, all of you, for substituting. And do not forget, if you have not done so, to sign in for the attendance roster. We are doing interim study bills, and before we begin that, I want to just go through what happens with interim study bills. For anybody who is here in their first or second session, this is really the first time dealing with an interim study bill, because last session, of course, ended early and there was no interim study of any bills. So if you want to sort of find out what happened, you actually have to go back to the prior session, that is 2 sessions ago. So the deadline for work on interim study bills is actually after the summer, in the fall. If this feels like you're being dragged back to school after graduation, can you imagine coming back here in September or October to deal with these? So we're trying to get this done in June. But the report deadline is technically in the fall. If you look at your calendar, you're going to see that date is in the fall. And the calendar, one of the last calendars of this session, will come out, and I expect it will be at the beginning of November, and it will have the reports from the interim study bills. But as you know, as a body, we will only meet again for veto day probably sometime in September. So these actually will not be voted on. These simply go as a recommendation to either file something in the future or not. We cannot vote on things in regards to binding other sessions, and other sessions are not required to do anything that we do. If you want to look at interim study reports, you would go to the 9 November 2018 House calendar. And that will be all of the interim study reports that were filed for the bills of that session. And you will see that the bills are either recommended or not recommended. And there is no possibility to amend a bill at this point. We are literally considering the bill as it is. Those are the only 2 motions that can be made. So there is a reason why interim study is sort of referred to as the end of a bill, because it is really difficult for the committee, if not impossible, to do anything substantively. And obviously, legislators are free to file legislation next session, regardless of what the recommendation of any committee is on interim study bills. And you're not the only people who have been dragged back for this. As you know, we were kicked out of our regular room because someone else had already been assigned it. All right, so with that, I asked Christina to go through some research so we could figure out what, if anything else, had happened. So the first bill we have today, and I note that one of the sponsors of 327 is with us today, is in regards to requiring that voter show ID when personally delivering absentee ballots. This was introduced when we had it by Catherine Prudhomme O'Brien, representative who was prime sponsor of the bill. We heard from, I think then, Deputy Scanlon. No, he might have been secretary at that point, in regards to the bill itself. And there were a number of questions in regards to how to proceed. So Christina has done a memo on that. And I'm going to open it up to discussion now because I don't want to lead this whole thing here. And if Representative Hamblett.
So I have a copy of an amendment, but nobody else seemed to have that copy. Did we just not decide on the amendment? Filed by Representative Marsh and Representative Quayle.
Representative Quayle's here.
Yeah.
Do you recall your amendment? I don't have it in my book on 327 when I pulled stuff together for tonight.
Well, I brought some material relevant to that bill. It might be in here. I have a question, though. We're recommending or not recommending the bill as introduced because the amendment, I think, was adopted by the committee, but not by the House. But was the amendment adopted by the committee? I don't remember.
I don't know. I'm going to have to, I don't have that it was adopted by the committee.
Okay, then I might be misremembering that.
And I'm seeing that my legislative support here is.
But in any case, since the bill was not amended by the House, then are we recommending or not recommending the bill as introduced?
We are.
Okay, thank you.
So let me read a report from a bill from a previous session. It is not an election law bill. It was an environmental and agricultural bill, and it was not recommended for future legislation. The full committee met with interested parties regarding the issue. This was crop theft. Members of this committee will be introducing new legislation in the new biennium based on our findings. Another one, not recommended. The bill was retained and subsequently referred because the committee felt that things needed to be done. Ultimately, the participants decided that no more comprehensive bill should be brought forward if those things should not be addressed, and that this bill in its particular form should not go forward. Let me find one that's recommended. This one is a multiple employer public retirement plan. The committee felt that that employers would benefit from multiple plans. This legislation as written will not work. Things are changing at the federal level, and the committee strongly believes a study committee should be formed to look at those changes in regulation and how other legislation has been working before we fully implement this. I'm sorry, that was a not recommend. I printed out a sheet where it looks like everything is not recommended. I don't know whether that's a sign for me or not. Oh, no, here is one that's recommended. The committee recommends that legislation be introduced to allow retirement system to review positions and not require an additional legislative approval. So it recommended the concept, but felt that there were still problems. So this is really pretty wide open as to what we do. So Representative Quayle, what had your amendment sought to do to this bill?
It attempted to refine the signature matching requirement in part, added that provision. attempted to fine tune the signature matching requirement, I would say, is a good summary of what the amendment tried to do. The issue with signature matching right now, as I think we mostly understand, is that it was made invalid by a court decision. I think that was I forget the date of the court. I have it here, but anyways, it was I guess in regular English you could say it was put on hold because of some procedural problems the court saw with how it's conducted. The court decision, as I understood the decision, and I did review it as a layman, not a lawyer, but it appeared to me that the court decision ruled out signature matching based on procedural difficulties. For example, lack of training of moderators to actually analyze handwriting. It didn't rule it out as a matter of principle, and in fact, signature matching is used in absentee ballots. When I read this last, in 31 different states, including states like California and Nevada and so on. So the amendment by Representative Marsh and I intended to fine tune the procedure in the hopes of overcoming some of the objections in the ruling. If my recollection is accurate, this is from over a year ago, but I believe we decided it should go to interims. We believed ultimately as a committee it should go to interim study because we really need to take an overall look at the signature matching, not just try to fix a piece of it here and there. So it deserves further consideration, but the bill as introduced would have the signature reviewed by the clerk and make a marking that it had been, no, excuse me. The bill as originally produced would have the absentee voter present ID to the clerk, and then the clerk would make a notation that would say the absentee ballot when received didn't need to be signature matched. Well, that's kind of beside the point right now because we don't have a working signature matching system.
Thank you, Representative Quirrell. Representative Bergeron, I have some notes here about your comments on some needed work on the bill.
Yeah, one of the things I recall on Representative Quayle's Amendment 2 was a recommendation that we simplify the marking of the envelope, and it would just say VV for voter verified instead of AIPIDS, appeared in person ID shown, which makes a lot of sense. I'm all for streamlining and making things more efficient. One of the major objections, though, I had to the bill at the time was that the clerk is being directed to mark the absentee ballot affidavit. And under existing law, the clerk is not authorized to remove the affidavit envelope from the outer envelope. So we're setting up a conflicting situation here where one statute says the clerk shall not remove the affidavit envelope, and another one is saying, yeah, go ahead and take it away so that you can mark up the affidavit envelope. So that issue needed to be resolved. And although I didn't bring it up at the time, there's, and I can't find it in state law, so it might be in the election procedures manual. Currently, when designated agents are delivering absentee ballots, let's say, for example, from a nursing home, they have to show ID and fill out a form and present a letter that authorizes them to do so. If we're going to start a process of voter verification at the time envelopes are being dropped off, it would be nice to have a process in place that applies across the board to everybody, so that maybe we can get rid of these forms that are being filled out by family members and by nursing home representatives and just have a similar voter verified process going through so that there's one voter verification process being used for all instances of ballot delivery, not have one for one group, another process for a second group, and so on. So those are some of the issues that we had discussed.
Any other committee members? Representative, with the committee's permission, there is a representative here who was one of the sponsors of the bill. Did you want to add anything to the discussion come up and add anything? All right, the research that Attorney Dyer got us indicated that there was another bill going around with this, and I believe that was also part of our discussion on it. And it died in committee of conference. So there were a couple of bills to deal with this verification, but it doesn't look like anything passed. Is there any further discussion on 327? All right, if there's not, I'm going to move on to the next bill. Like I said, we'll go through a discussion on all of these, take a short break, and then we'll come back. The next bill we have is 480. 480 is relative to verification of ballots cast in an election. We had a public hearing on this in March. And you have in the research from Christina Dyer that there was a similar bill, and the information on this is contained in the research memo that she sent out to us. So I'll give people a minute to look at the research memo. I will say I was a little surprised when I looked at the research memo how long this issue has been floating around. Just for members of the public who might be watching, we got a research memo on that was on public access to ballots, where legislation also crossed over into verification of ballots. And it turned out that this issue has been going on for the last 10 years in regards to bills that have been filed in regards to verification of counts. And as to access, it's been going on even longer. Access to ballots cast in election, I think, was back in 2007. The testimony we heard on this went on for some time, as I recall. The testimony in the first instance was introduction by Jess Edwards, the representative from Auburn, who was prime sponsor of the bill. He acknowledged that this bill had been submitted a number of times before, and while Christina did not look into the details of it, I suspect it was very similar to that first passed or submitted in 2007. There was testimony in favor of it. The Secretary of State's office was in opposition to it in regards to ballots having never been seen, and that there had been previously been a court case in regards to this issue, and that the recount deals with the issue of counting, and that there's concern over privacy of the voter by allowing ballots public. Anybody? Representative Bergeron, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There were a few issues that local officials raised about this. First of all, the 28A consideration. On page 2, for example, it says that towns and cities may request reimbursement of additional expenses from the Secretary of State from the election fund established under RSA 5:6D. It doesn't say that the Secretary of State shall reimburse the cities and towns for any expenses they incur, and they can be formidable. I know in Nashua, for example, if we were to have a citywide recount, it's going to take all day, and that assumes enough people have been recruited to work on the recount. So I assume that it will require a lot of residents, citizens, whomever that wishes to do this looking or counting of ballots a day or perhaps longer. There are no restrictions in the bill that say how much time they need to get this done. For example, if they only have 4 people that show up to start reviewing the ballots and they want to review the city's entire ballots cast boxes, it could take days. And city and town clerks have very limited staff. They don't necessarily get a buildup at election time. Some cities and towns do build up staff. So they have their regular operations to take care of. This would require staff be pulled to remove the boxes from storage and then be present when all these materials are being counted. So that's going to increase staff obligations and costs on the cities and towns. There's also no limitation on who can ask for the recounts. It can be any registered New Hampshire voter. So presumably a resident of Nashua could go to Manchester and say, we want to look at all your ballots. So that's a concern. There's no restrictions on how often this can be done. Presumably, you might have 10 or 12 individuals that want to do this 10 or 12 different times because they each have their own agenda. They might be looking for different issues when they're reviewing the ballots. So it's just too open-ended. It's too expensive, and there needs to be more controls in place for this bill to be seriously considered.
Anybody else? I think the ballot review issue is something that's happened, obviously, we see from the memo over time. We heard a lot about it in this committee, in public hearings. I think there are a lot of competing interests to balance that so far just opening up ballots for inspection would seem to be problematic. We'll see where the audit goes, and that's our next bill. Any other discussion on HB 480? All right, moving on to HB 524. This was the first year session bill that we heard in regards to audit. It directed the Secretary of State's office to conduct hand recounts at 5 randomly selected locations that use electronic counting devices within 21 days after the general election is held. The prime sponsor of the bill, Representative Lang, is with us today. And I will ask him if he wants to speak on this after we have a little discussion. It should be noted that HB 1467 passed in regards to a partial audit, which will occur this fall. Members' comments. Representative Lang?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. So this bill was about voter confidence in government. And so I ask that you recommend for future legislation. I understand there is some mechanical issues in the bill that we need to address, and I will address if I refile and come back next year. But I think, again, the concept of the bill is sound, that just like any public company, auditing of financials are important to prove, have a positive outlook on a company when you're looking to invest or looking to do something. So again, I think that an audit or a verification count like this is needed. And I think the bill on its face is a good concept. It does have mechanical issues, which I'm happy to work out next year should I return to this fine body. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Did anybody have any questions for him? Representative Muirhead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative, do you think that that HB 1467, which is passed by both chambers, addresses some of the concerns that are meant to be addressed by HB 524?
Again, I'm not positive what that, if you want to give me a summary of what that bill was, then I can tell you whether I agree with you or not.
1467 was the product of a committee of conference, so that tells you something. And what it addresses is an audit in the primary and general election of 2022 only, with a report to be published. That's a gross overview. Anybody, and Representative Bergeron agrees with me.
So again, I think that helps. I think an ongoing, at the state general election, I'm not so worried about the primaries, but the state general elections, an ongoing audit that's in statute will slowly increase voter confidence in that fact that they think that their ballot counted. Just having a one-time hit. It's one of the reasons why, again, in this bill, I was interested and I found out that the last time we've done a recount of a statewide election was in the 70s, I believe. That's been 50 years since a statewide race has been,
Was that the Senate race?
I don't recall which race. I remember it was in the 70s.
It was the Senate race.
Yeah,
it
and
was
so-
how many votes? Representative McDonald, how many votes?
Well, it shifted back and forth. Initially, it was like ultimately 2 votes.
2 votes.
So again, the idea being that voter confidence is going to change overnight. That's going to take a long-term process to instill greater voter confidence in the election process, especially given what's happened over the last few years with elections. So again, I think a one-time audit's great, but I think an audit of 2% of every ballot and every race on that 2% is important to instill voter confidence.
Thank you. Further questions for Representative Lang? Representative Hayward.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for taking the question. Both of these bills, including that, are truly recount bills, not audit bills. I know we call them audits, but an audit would be a much broader look at the processes and the procedures. Okay, the application of rules, some training assessment. Goes well beyond just the recount. And neither of those bills fill that void.
I would agree with you. Again, I called it a verification count because it does 2 things, right? Besides verifying what the actual ballot counts were, it verifies the towns are doing it right. I'm a moderator, and I welcome any Secretary of State wants to come in and do a verification count to make sure my numbers are right and everything's working. You know, the numbers I reported were the actual numbers of the ballots. I think that's important because again, the random idea of this bill was the fact that every town could potentially be subjected to a verification count to make sure that the processes they were following are right, that the numbers they put on the moderator's report, they call it, that you put on and you give to the Secretary of State, that matches what was every piece of paper that you're supposed to account for. So it does, besides giving a voter confidence, it also will make sure that the process is being followed properly, right? Because you're verifying what's reported by the town is what's is in a hand count is accurate.
Okay. Anything else from committee members for Representative Lang? Thank you. And Representative Mooney.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative, for coming. I also want to bring your attention to Senate Bill 366, which came to Finance, which I sit on, having been on this committee for a year, and now Finance comes in handy in a conversation like this. But Senate Bill 366 were the random audits in the fall. So how does that, and we've been talking a lot about House Bill 1467, So just want to bring that to your attention and see if you have any comments with regards to that, because it looks like it's getting ready for a gubernatorial signature, Senate Bill 366.
Again, I'm not familiar with that bill, so I'd have to go back and read it. So again, I'll look at that again. That may adjust again if the committee makes the recommendation of recommend for future legislation. I'll look at that bill as well and see if and fill any gaps, right? Because we all know that first passes of bills sometimes are not perfect. So maybe between recommending this and looking at that bill, we can find a more perfect solution.
And thank you to Representative Quayle, our resident engineer, for providing the bill upon mention to Representative Lang. Anyone else for Representative Lang? All right, I'm not seeing anything. Thank you now, Representative Lang. Anybody else from the committee on this? Sure. Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions for Representative Lang. I'm sorry.
No, I knew. He's just sitting there reading.
Okay.
These ones.
That's all right. I didn't mean to
I got
chase you
it.
away.
I knew.
Representative. I agree with the sponsor of the bill that the concept of post-election audits is sound. And I was on the committee conference report that supported House Bill 1467. I was a little disappointed in it. I don't think it went far enough, but it's a start. And I think we can learn from that start, in terms of actually the Secretary of State conducting an audit of election results, working with the city and town clerks and moderators to make it occur, and finding out what kinds of equipment will work and get a better understanding of the cost. So hopefully after 1467 is implemented, we can grow with that foundation and do something more. The National Conference of State Legislators has some excellent information on post-election audits. And what I found surprising is that there are actually 8 different types of post-election audits. And it would be of value, I think, that any legislation sponsors be able to tell this committee why one type of audit is better than another for New Hampshire. And that kind of research, I think, still needs to be done. And I would note that New Hampshire is one of only, I think, 7 states that don't have some kind of post-election audit. So I definitely feel that there is a need to do so. There's one other thing I would like to see in future legislation, and that would be a requirement that the state also audit votes cast in towns and wards that hand count their ballots. Because it would be very easy to audit the AccuVote machines or any other machine that's approved in the future, find out there's a half of 1% discrepancy and have people scream, see, it's not working. But if you're also auditing hand-counted ballots and find that there's a 3 or 5% discrepancy, well, then suddenly the electronic voting devices have more accuracy than hand counting. And I can tell you from my own experience that the biggest discrepancies were usually found in recounts involving hand-counted ballots. For those of you that have done recounts, you know that you probably have 2 candidates running, you're sorting the ballots in stacks of 25. It's very easy to take a stack of 25 and put it in the wrong candidate's pile, and suddenly you have a swing of 50 votes. So having that baseline to compare the differences in an audit for hand-counted ballot towns with those that use electronic voting devices, I think would have some value in any kind of post-election audit. So again, I certainly support the concept of post-election audits. I don't think that this particular bill is the one to use to address it at this time, but I am certain this committee will review other suggestions in the next session.
Further comments or discussion? All right, the next bill we have in front of us this morning is 551, relative to the statewide voter database. This bill would require that the voter registration database be made publicly available in electronic format, provided that the Secretary of State could allow for limited exceptions. It was fairly broad. There was an issue of costs. There was an issue from the Secretary of State's office in regards to the fact this dealt with the HAVA database, which it felt that some of the information on there was confidential. Discussion, Representative Sweeney.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I do appreciate the comparison chart that was produced by Christina. I believe I was the sponsor of HB 1010 and 223. And I believe Representative Berry, who's not here, worked a lot on 1496. And I believe I helped him in his amendment language. I think in the last 2 years, we've done a lot on people's access to the voter rolls. 1496, if signed, people can go to their supervisor or their town and get the electronic list of their checklist. There's access to the checklist for folks that want it. We've made municipal voter history as part of the statewide voter registration database. We've increased the access that the two recognized political parties in the state and any organized political organization have to reach out to the Secretary of State's office and get the voter data that they're inquiring about. So I do believe that we've made so many significant changes over the last 2 years on what we have access to and what individuals have access to. So I'm not sure if the spirit or the intent of 551, which, as you said, was broad and kind of full sweeping, I think a lot of the concerns that people have, we did address through the other legislation that we did pass. So I'm not sure if when we're talking later about what we want to recommend, I think we might have covered it in terms of what people were looking for, in terms of expanding access to the information. So that's just one area where I think we really did, in a regulated, particular way, get to the point of what the original sponsors were trying to get accomplished with 551. That's just my take.
Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with everything that Representative Sweeney said. I just, for the record, would like to mention or define, if I could, what words like broad and sweeping mean, since the chair and Representative Sweeney use those words. The legislation says that the voter database shall be made electronically available to members of the public. And that's not the same thing as the checklist. The voter database includes a lot of elements, a lot of fields of information which contain personal identifying information, if something as simple as dates of birth, for example, which does not appear on the checklist. One could argue that in addition to the data fields, the voter database might include the coding, the queries, some of the other software aspects that drive ElectionNet, not just the information that's contained within it. So I agree with Representative Sweeney. I think some progress has been made in making the checklists more available to the public, but this one is too broad and sweeping because of the term used, voter database.
Anybody else? Representative Muirhead, was that a hand? That was glasses in the air and a nod. I didn't
Just
know.
nodding in general affirmation.
All right. The other thing no one is really talking about is that this would provide electronic access to a state database that we don't currently allow. And it sort of has this this line that sort of we really almost didn't even discuss in regards to the information it was going to provide adequate technological security measures to deter unauthorized access to the records contained in the voter database. I'm not really sure it would be responsible for a committee to pass anything with that. And the fiscal note, I don't know what the finance committee would do with this fiscal note, because the fiscal note only addressed the loss of revenue, not the expense of implementing it. As if staff was just going to take on this project and be able to work it into its current day. And given the issues with security and the concerns we've had about a portal for election information, I'm not quite sure that even if we all agreed it was something that should happen, I don't know how with this bill you could even get there. Representative Quayle.
Yes, we had quite a lot of discussion on this bill in committee. And I recall very clearly that the sponsor of the bill himself indicated that his real intent was to have the checklist information available readily to the public. And he hadn't, I think I'll leave it at that. His real interest was in the checklist information, not all the data in the database.
Okay.
Which means this bill as written, I don't think it's one that I would consider recommending in its form. And I think if the sponsor brought forth a variant of this where it's focused on his real interest, that would be an interesting thing to see. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. The last bill that we have remaining from the session is the absentee ballot application form. This is SB 54. It is in regards to including certain identity information for absentee ballots. We also had HB 144, which the Senate simply non-concurred on. This particular bill added driver's license or some sort of identification number, the last four digits of a social security number, or some sort of other information. Discussion.
Madam Chairman.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I had been a co-sponsor on this bill initially, and some excellent testimony was brought up during the public hearing and subsequent discussions. There is a privacy concern regarding the last four digits of an applicant's social security number. That's a legitimate concern. And also there's a question about the availability of some of the verifications we're asking for. So, you know, while I was originally a co-sponsor, I have misgivings about this bill also, and obviously want to hear what everybody else thinks, but I definitely, this needs more work.
Anybody else? Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with Representative McDonald, and we'll expand on it just a little bit. The last few lines of the bill say that the town clerk is authorized to verify driver's license and non-driver's picture ID information with the Department of Safety. And it was brought up in testimony, as Representative McDonald indicated, that the clerks don't necessarily have the right to access this information for this purpose. It also came out during testimony that not all city clerks handle vehicle registration, so they don't have authorization to enter the database at all. And I think we're all aware that driver's license numbers are changing, and a lot of the driver's license information that may be contained in voters who registered maybe 5 years or more ago would have a driver's license number different than what they currently have on their license. So it'll be hard to verify numbers that don't match up anymore. And finally, ElectionNet was established in 2006, and all the registered voter local databases were migrated to ElectionNet in that time, and most of them did not include driver's license information because that requirement came about with the National Voter Registration Act, or HAVA, as some people refer to it. And so there are a lot of records, election records existing that just doesn't contain driver's license information anyway. So that's all I would bring up on Senate Bill 54.
Does anybody have a real ID? How does the driver's license number differ on the real ID? Anybody know?
I have one, but I don't know how to get.
Madam Chair?
That just made me think. I'm just wondering whether, well, I mean, just, do you know did the number you get, did it stay the same?
I
No.
can,
No, so it used to go by your name and date of birth, and now it's just a regular number.
That's off with NHL, right?
NHL.
yeah, I used to,
does not reference your name and date of birth anymore.
I kind of resented it when they gave me this because I got my license in 1982 in Manchester, and I had the same number the whole time. Even when I moved back to the state, they gave me my old number, and then when I got my real ID, they gave me this. I could always remember it because of my birthday, you know, jumble of your birthday.
Right, right.
And now I got this long thing. It doesn't mean anything. So this is the new administrative state solution to real ID.
And so just, does anybody know if and I think I know the answer to this question, if DMV updates your driver's license number in accordance with your new driver's license, does that automatically update on other departments' databases? Let me guess the answer to that one.
Departments in government are talking about
Yeah. All right, so that's, I hadn't even thought of that when we were talking about driver's license numbers all this term in a number of cases, whether it be 4 or 5 digits, because there was some discussion about going to 5 digits, because the issue with 4 digits is, just like your birth date, it's really not enough of a distinguisher, because the,
It's not, it's
the,
just the point of reference when I misplaced my license, it got stolen, I had to go back and there was another gentleman with the same
for,
initials and the same date of birth numbers that they use. They tried to give me his license. I said, do I look like him? Completely different.
So, so I think that's part of why we might have seen some things talking about, or heard discussion about using 5 digits for the social security number. So, couple of issues with that. Any further discussion on SB 54? All right, any further discussion for what I noticed as a work session for these bills? All right, we're going to take a break till 10 past 11, and then we're going to exec all these bills.
Madam Chair,
Representative Muirhead.
what room are the refreshments in?
I think the cafeteria is still open across the way downstairs. All right. Good morning still, everybody. This is the New Hampshire House Election Law Committee. We are back in session. We spent time earlier this morning talking about the 5 bills that are noticed to be dealt with as the end of our session work. The first bill is HB 327. This is requiring that voters show identification when personally delivering absentee ballots to town and city clerks. We talked about the pros and cons and what this was attempting to do. Is there a motion on HB 327? Representative Hayward.
Madam Chair, I would move that we do not recommend this going forward. HB 327.
Is there a second? Representative,
Sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't hear the comments.
what was, you want to repeat your motion, Representative Hayward?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move that we do not recommend this going forward.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Representative Bergeron seconds it. Representative Hayward, did you want to speak to your motion?
Madam Chair, I believe we covered the information adequately to this point on this one.
Anything further? Are you all set to call the roll? All right, if there's no further discussion, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Okay, Representative McDonald votes yes. Representative, who's in for Catherine? I don't know.
No, Catherine's
Okay.
absent.
Okay. Representative Sweeney is not here at the moment. Representative Haywood,
Yes.
Representative Terosian is
Right.
absent. Representative Johnson,
Yes.
Representative Quayle,
Yes.
Representative Mooney,
Yes.
Representative Bergeron,
Yes.
Representative Schultz,
Yes.
Representative Ward,
Yes.
Representative Sandler, Representative Hamer,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Nutting Wong,
Yes.
Representative Hamlet,
Yes.
Representative Muirhead,
Yes.
Representative Griffin.
Yes.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Vote is 15-0.
Thank you. The next bill that is for our consideration this morning is HB 480, relative to the verification of ballots cast in an election. We had discussion on this morning, and our discussion was about the extensive discussion we've had previously on this. Is there a motion? All right.
I move, Madam Chairman, not recommend.
Is there a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative McDonald, did you want to speak to your motion?
Well, again, we've discussed it at length, and I think the consensus of the committee is that this legislation needs much more work for it to be effective, and certainly not ready to recommend to go forward at this time.
Any further discussion? All those in, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative Bergeron, you seconded that, I believe?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Okay, HB 480, Representative McDonald votes yes. Let's see. Representative Haywood,
Yes.
Representative Johnson,
Yes.
Representative Quayle,
Yes.
Representative Mooney,
Yes.
Representative Bergeron,
Yes.
Representative Schultz,
Yes.
Representative Ward,
Yes.
Representative Sandler, Representative Hamer,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Nutting Wong,
Yes.
Representative Hamlet,
Yes.
Representative Muirhead,
Yes.
Representative Griffin,
Yes.
15-0, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. HB 480 is not recommended for future legislation. The next bill we considered here this morning and will now take a vote on is HB 524. This was a bill requiring the Secretary of State to conduct random verification counts of polling place results. Is there a motion? Representative Quayle.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that the committee not recommend this bill.
Is there a second?
I will
Rep-
second.
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Representative Bergeron seconds it. Did you want to speak to your motion, Representative Quayle?
Yes, very briefly, I think the concept of post-election audits has a great deal of merit. But it would be worthwhile to institute a procedure like that in this state. However, I think the best approach would be to start with a fresh bill rather than try to continue with this one. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion, which is HB 524? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll. Going to.
Representative McDonald votes yes. Representative Haywood,
Yes.
Representative Johnson,
Yeah.
Representative Quayle,
Yes.
Representative Mooney,
Yes.
Representative Bergeron,
Yes.
Representative Schultz,
Yes.
Representative Ward,
Yes.
Representative Sandler, Representative Hamer,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Nutting Wong,
Yes.
Representative Hamlet,
Yes.
Representative Muirhead,
Yes.
Representative Griffin,
Yes.
15-0, Madam Chairman.
The next bill for our consideration here this morning is HB 551. This is relative to the statewide voter database and access to it. Is there a motion? Since we're spreading the joy. I'll move it. You can take the next one. So I move HB 551, not recommend. Is there a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Representative Bergeron seconds it. In regards to 551, we had a pretty good discussion on this morning. There were a number of issues in regards to the database and the bill itself in regards to the fiscal note. And while we understand the desire to have access, there's other legislation that's been adopted that provides more access than we've had in the past, and we'll take steps as are deemed appropriate. Is there any further discussion on it? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the acting clerk. I apologize. Representative McDonald has been doing a number of roles here today. So to call the roll. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative McDonald votes yes. Representative Haywood,
Yes.
Representative Johnson,
Yeah.
Representative Quayle,
Yes.
Representative Mooney,
Yes.
Representative Bergeron,
Yes.
Representative Schultz,
Yes.
Representative Ward,
Yes.
Representative Sandler, Representative Hamer,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Nutting Wong,
Yes.
Representative Hamlet,
Yes.
Representative Muirhead,
Yes.
Representative Griffin,
Yes.
15-0, Madam Chairman.
The last bill to be considered by the committee today and this session is SB 54 relative to the absentee ballot application form. Is there a motion? Representative
thank you.
Hayward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we do not recommend forward SB 54.
Is there a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Representative Bergeron seconds. Did you want to speak to your motion?
Madam Chair, the is unworkable in its current form.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Brevity is the soul of wit.
And that can be written in the report. All right, seeing no discussion, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald votes yes. Representative Haywood,
Yes.
Representative Johnson.
Yeah.
Representative Quayle,
Yes.
Representative Mooney,
Yes.
Representative Bergeron,
Yes.
Representative Schultz,
Yes.
Representative Ward,
Yes.
Representative Sandler, Representative Hamer,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Nutting Wong,
Yes.
Representative Hamlet,
Yes.
Representative Muirhead,
Yes.
Representative Griffin,
Yes,
15-0, Madam Chairman.
thank you. And that is the last vote. I want to thank everybody for coming in this morning to actually finish up the business in this sort of strange territory and strange motions in regards to bills that we can't do anything with one way or another. One thing that has changed since the last time we met as an election law committee is that signups have happened. And I happen to know that Representative Hayward did not sign up to run again. So I want to extend my thanks to Representative Hayward, that it's been a pleasure to work with him. And I want to thank him very much for being part of this committee and doing this work for his constituents. It's been a pleasure to have you here. So thank you very much. Is there anybody else who didn't sign up again?
Representative Sandler and myself are not returning.
I did not know that.
Yes. Yep.
Well, that is, I will say to both of you, I think that's a loss to the House.
Well,
That's a
thank you.
It's a huge loss to this committee.
Yep.
Um,
Appreciate it. And I thank everybody for the support and respect that was shown during the last 4 years I've served in this committee. And I wish everyone a wonderful summer and great success in
It's
your
not because
re-elections.
Representative Griffin and I were too tough to work with. We
Not at all. Not at all.
Thank you, Representative
Thank
Bergeron. And Representative Sandler, I know that you worked very hard to be here and to do the work here, and I really appreciate what I know you went through to be here with us. It meant a lot that you wanted to be part of this. And with that, we are done. Have a great summer, everybody.